So, hello everybody and welcome. Yes, welcome back here at BSN Network. Can we back here, BSN Network? This is the BSN Network podcast here today. It is Thursday, February 11th. Hope everyone's having a good day so far and a good rest of their day yesterday. It is, in fact, Thursday, February 11th. We are now only 6 days away from pitchers and catchers reporting and spring training starting. It's going to be super exciting. We'll have it all covered here on the podcast here. Should be really good. Exciting to have baseball back. It's going to be really exciting to see baseball back, obviously, after last season's quick 60-game season. Really, realistically, for the teams that didn't make the playoffs, that had to be the quickest season ever. They played a quick 60 games, and boom, just like that, your season's over. So, we'll see how this year goes. Hopefully, they can manage everything well and get a season that's, that doesn't get too many stoppages, not too many cancellations. Hopefully, we get a good season and get a successful year. So it's going to be super exciting to get baseball back. That's right around the corner. Nets got a win yesterday. Rangers did not. Rangers blow another lead. We were winning. Then we blew it. There's not much else I got to say there. We lost overtime. We had a miscommunication led to a Brad Marchand breakaway. Just Alexander Georgiev's got to learn how to stop a breakaway. So, we'll see how this team continues to go. But another tough loss for the Rangers. We did gain a point. We got to overtime. So we gained a point, but still, we got to be better. We got to find a way to be better. We got to find a way to make less mistakes, get better shots up, because I will tell you what, I have not seen that many quality shots out of this team. So we got to find a way to get better, and we got to find a way to start winning some games, because 4-5-3 with only 12 points in 12 games this season, it's definitely we got to. We got to step up our game, especially given that we're in a division with the Flyers, with the Bruins, with the Penguins, teams like that are not, that with the Capitals, teams like that. Those teams are at the top of the league. We got to pick it up. The Nets got the win. Really good win for the Brooklyn Nets. I think this is last night, I think, was one of their best all-around good games of the year. They played their best defensive game of the year. They only allowed 94 points, which is a miracle for a team that this season's putting up about 125 points per game. We won, obviously, 104-94, but I'll tell you what, super really good for the really good for the Brooklyn Nets to get that win there. Held them to only 30 points in the first half. And to put that in perspective, the game before that, they let up 30 points in the first quarter. So really crazy how good we played on defense. But these are the topics for today. We got Andrew Benintendi got traded to the Royals. This is a big move for the MLB. A 3-team trade with the Mets involved. Red Sox trade him to the Royals, and the Mets are involved. So a 3-team trade. The Mets get a prospect, but not too crazy. But I'm going to talk about it. The Mets were involved. Even if the Mets weren't involved, I'm still going to talk about it. This is a pretty big move. This is a guy, he's still pretty young. Kind of surprising to see the Red Sox trade him, but they did. He's going to the Royals, and I'll tell you how this helps out the Royals in a way. For a young rebuilding team in the Royals, I'll tell you how this helps them in a way. Then Russell Wilson rumors. Teams are calling in about Russell Wilson. A couple days ago, Russell Wilson expressed his frustration about the situation in Seattle with how the offensive line has struggled, how he got the sack. Russell Wilson was obviously the most sacked quarterback last season in the entire NFL. He took 51 sacks last season. That's the most amongst NFL quarterbacks. The player right behind him was Carson Wentz, and I forget the other player behind him, but Wentz got, I think, like 50-something, and he got 51. So Russell Wilson was the most sacked quarterback last season. So he wants a better offensive line. It seems like there's something boiling there, but in a way, teams are calling, and the Seahawks do not want to trade him. But I'll tell you why this might turn into a slight Deshaun Watson situation. If they're not going to help Russell Wilson with the offensive line, it might turn into a situation where he might want out. I'll talk about that coming up. Then to finish it off, we got college basketball, NBA, NHL. fantasy, and in your rest of your New York sports update. Nets obviously have a day off today. Rangers have a day off today. So my two favorite teams currently in session are not playing today. Kentucky obviously isn't playing today. They play on Saturday. So that's your stuff there. But a good NBA game tonight between the Sixers and the Trailblazers. That should be a good game. That's on TNT. And a couple good college basketball games as well. And like I said, the Nets and the Rangers have a day off. But the sports is going as usual. A couple good games in in the NHL and NBA, so should be pretty good. But with all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get right into it. So Andrew Benintendi traded from Red Sox to Royals in 3-team deal with the Mets. So Andrew Benintendi, obviously outfielder for the now the Kansas City Royals, but he was the outfielder for the Boston Red Sox. What was a big part of that championship run when they obviously won it back in 2018 when they defeated the Dodgers back when they were good. Now they stink. But he plays. He's a good left fielder. He's quick. He can do all that stuff. I personally, I'm not a big fan of Benintendi. I don't really like him that much. And the reason I say that is he's a Red Sox. I'm just not a big fan of him. I think he's a little cocky. I'm just not a huge fan of him. But I don't want to make it seem like you should hate him, or anyone should just dislike him for my reason. I personally don't like him. People out there could love him, hate him, whatever, take him or leave him. I personally don't like him. But he is a pretty decent player. I wouldn't say he's great. I wouldn't say he's terrible. But it's a very surprising deal. And like I said, I think I said this yesterday, or even a couple days ago. I mean, I don't think there will be many trades. Now, like I said, I don't think this trade, I talked about the rankings yesterday, I don't think this trade is going to make much of a difference on the Royals' run this season. I don't think the Royals are going to win the World Series, and I don't think this is a deal that puts the Royals all the way up here. For the future, this deal bolsters them insane, because Benintendi's got MLB experience, and he's still very young. So for the future of that Royals team, a team that is looking towards the future, I know I've been saying this a lot, but got a very good farm system, got a couple really good young guys, got a little bit of a mix. There's some veteran guys like a Salvador Perez and stuff like that. But obviously, now that they're really building towards the future and stuff, Benintendi is the right guy for this. But as I said, these next couple of days, there's going to be a good amount of action. Jake Marisnick, for example, not a huge name, played with the Mets a little bit last year. I'm not going to talk about it on a pod, but not a huge name, but a guy like Jake Marisnick, for example, he got signed today, right? There's going to be a bunch of these little signings here and there as these teams start to fill out their rosters for the regular season. Obviously, that's coming up very soon, and obviously spring training, that's coming up right around the corner, February 17th, only 6 days from now. So I wasn't really expecting to see a 3-team deal 6 days before, actually 7 days, because this deal happened yesterday, but now 6 days before spring training, I was not expecting to see a 3-team deal involving the Red Sox, the Royals, and the Mets. And the Mets are in on this, but the Mets didn't get much. They got a prospect, so we'll see how he does in their farm system. He could very well go up to the Syracuse Mets, play a little bit there. They use him as trade bait down the road. But really the big name that they're switching is Andrew Benintendi. And the one thing, you look at this trade and you think, the Royals, you're building towards the future. They did give up some prospects and some younger players, but they are gaining a younger player with MLB experience. I think that's what makes at times people really think Andrew Benintendi's been really successful, is because he's still very young and he's already got an MLB experience. He's got some of the most experience out of everyone. This guy's been already to a World Series, and he's already won a World Series, and he made an impact on that World Series team. It wasn't like he was a bench player that was the last guy on the roster that taken up from AA, right? Or AAA, whatever A you're in. But this is a guy that's got MLB experience. So I think if the Royals look at it is they have a glaring outfielder need. They bring in Benintendi. This is not a guy that's going to need the time to develop in the minor leagues because he's already came up with the Red Sox. But it was very surprising to see this. And like I said, I don't really know if the Red Sox, this is the right deal for them. And I get it, they're building for the future. But this is a guy that could be your future right here. Not saying this is the face of the franchise. I'm just saying this is a guy that very well could have, along with Alex Verdugo, Benintendi, this could have been a guy that definitely could have been built for the future. And now you lose Benintendi, and you lose a guy out there in center field in Jackie Bradley Jr. Really, the only one left is Alex Verdugo, and that's kind of a problem. And that's kind of problematic because people don't realize outfielding is a very important position, right? Sometimes the games are won in the outfield, whether it's a hard hit line drive right to you, make that play, wherever the case may be. Outfielders are huge. Late in games, especially with this new extra inning rule with the runner on second base, if you get a gapper and you don't got good center or right fielders or left fielders, that's going to be it. Game over. Forget about it. If you don't got a guy out, if you don't have a guy out there that can stretch the field and throw it from midway in the outfield all the way to home plate or at least to the pitcher, that's problematic. So I really think the Red Sox lost this trade. I get it. They're gaining prospects. They're gaining future. But in a way, they also gave up future. And they also gave up a player that has had a pretty good run with them and has had World Series experience. And like I said, this is definitely a Red Sox team that's in the rebuilding stages, which I love to see because I can't stand the Red Sox. Although I do like when it's a good Yankees-Red Sox game where like both teams are battling it out. That's something that the Yankees fans are going to miss a little bit for the next couple of seasons when the Red Sox are going through this little bit of a rebuild, is the fact that, you know, these teams and you know, the fact that, you know, with you know, the fact that the Red Sox are struggling a little bit makes the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry still bitter. You know, not many people still like it. I don't like the Red Sox still, but it definitely makes the rivalry a little bit less as, you know, pumped up because one team's contending and the other team's at the bottom of the division. But Benintendi traded to the Red Sox or Royals. To kind of explain the Royals side of things, like I said, they're getting a glaring need, which is an outfielder. They're getting a guy, like I said, Benintendi, he's not a huge power hitter. And I've said this so many times on podcasts when talking about different players, Lindor, when talking about McCann, when talking about LeMahieu, when talking about a bunch of different guys, Springer, guys like that, talking about Puig, whatever the case may be. I've talked about power, no power, limited power, minimal power, average power, strikeout or nothing guys, right? Benintendi, I would say, is more that guy. He's not going to have insane, I'm not going to say he has insane power. He's not insane power. He doesn't have, he's not a guy that's going to launch the ball 470 feet every night. I definitely think the short porch there and the short outfield in Red Sox Stadium made a difference. But this is a guy, like I said, he's quick. He's going to make plays in the outfield. He's quick. I think that's one of the really big things for an outfielder. He's quick. But like I said, for the Red Sox, you really are giving up a lot. I mean, you're giving up a lot. You're giving up him, and this isn't like Jackie Bradley Jr., they're letting him walk. And, I get you're going to build around some of these guys like a Verdugo, Rafael Devers and guys like this. But you're getting rid of a lot when you think of that. Like, just getting rid of him. And it's not like that he's that good. He's just a young piece that has had experience and is growing. It's almost like each game he takes a step forward. And you just traded that guy away for prospects, and now what are you going to do in your outfield? Because now you just lost two outfielders. One's remaining from last season. What are you going to do? What are you going to do in the outfield now? It's going to be an interesting situation. And like I said, the Red Sox are going through a rebuild, but this is not a guy you would trade entering a rebuild. So definitely a little bit of an odd trade for the Red Sox. But the Royals, if I was a Royals fan today, I think it would be a solid trade. This isn't, like I said, this isn't going to go from here for the. This isn't like the Royals are getting a guy like Lindor it isn't like Trevor Bauer chose the Royals in this situation, or a guy like a game changer, a guy that's going to really help your team. This is a guy that's going to go out there, give you some solid performances, gonna make plays in the outfield. I think his defense is even better than his offense. Gonna make plays in the outfield. Gonna go out there, try his best. He's gonna grow. He's young. He's young. He's going to listen to advice. He's going to take as much advice as he can. And in a way, for Benintendi, I feel like his growing period and his developing was with the Red Sox. Now it's time to really gear in and focus on being an everyday player at the major league level with the Kansas City Royals. That's really what I think I see here. And like I said, with the Mets, they're getting a prospect, so I can't even imagine really him doing much. But I definitely think the Red Sox here, I think they probably will use the prospects. They got, obviously, they sent Franchi Cordero and Jason Winkowski to the Red Sox, so they're getting a right-handed pitcher and an outfielder. So in a way, I guess you're adjusting. You're giving up an outfielder, getting an outfielder, and getting a pitcher. And then the Mets get prospect Khalil Lee, which is nothing crazy. It's not like the Mets are getting every player in this deal. The Mets kind of the Mets, in a way, it's I always look at these deals as the Mets are kind of just one of those people, like, if you're doing something or an activity, you need one more person. The Mets are kind of just that situation where, hey, come over here, let me just give you this player, right? The Mets, I don't think, the Mets got this guy, but it's not like the Mets are in an insane deal. It's not like the Mets are getting Benintendi. It's not like the Mets are getting Benintendi in this deal. So let me just read this quick article. Then I want to go over some of the numbers of Benintendi and kind of tell you where he might fit in that Royals lineup a little bit there. So Andrew Benintendi traded from Red Sox to Royals in 3-team deal with the Mets. The Boston Red Sox are trading outfielder Andrew Benintendi to the Kansas City Royals in a 3-team deal with the Red Sox announced Wednesday night. John Heyman of MLB Network first reported the deal. According to Jeff Passan of ESPN, the team would also see outfield prospect Khalil Lee go from Kansas City to New York Mets, and Royals outfielder Franchi Cordero to Boston. Right-handed pitcher Josh Winkowski, who was recently acquired by the Mets in the Steven Matz deal, is headed to the Red Sox per Heyman. Joel Sherman of the New York Post reported the Mets will also be including a player to be named later in the deal. The player's obviously been named by now. Benintendi, 26, hit just 103 with an RBI and 4 runs in 2014 games and 52 plate appearances in a lost 2020 season. He looked like one of the game's young and up-and-coming stars after hitting 20 home runs with 20 stolen bases and 90 RBIs in 2017. He followed it up by posting a subpar numbers 290 with 16 dingers, 87 RBIs, 21 stolen bases, 103 runs in 2018. He wasn't terrible in 2019, hitting 266 with 13 homers, 68 RBIs, 10 steals, and 72 runs. But it was something of a down year and a precursor 2020's letdown. Like I said, he's not amazing, but he's still growing, and I feel like now it's kind of time for him to get out of that growing stage and kind of go into, okay, let me try to be an everyday right field or left fielder. The Red Sox are willing to give up on him this offseason is a surprise, given the potential he flashed in the past and fact that they are shopping him while his value is depressed. But Boston chose to move on. One concern is that Benintendi's speed has diminished throughout his career, per Alex Spear of the Boston Globe. The big league average sprint speed is about 27 feet per second. When Benintendi reached the big leagues in 2017, StatCast measured his average sprint speed at 28.6 feet per second, a mark that ranked as elite in the 89th percentile in the majors. His speed has declined in each subsequent year, down to below average mark of 26.6 in 2020. Again, small sample size, warnings are necessary. I will tell you what, and I don't know if you guys ever heard of, or anyone watching this, I don't know if you ever heard of John Boy Media or Talking Yanks. It's like a podcast they do. And they talk about, Yankees, baseball stuff. And there was this stat that came up there talking about yesterday on one of their live streams. It was one of their stats. It was like, it's a really good channel. You should go check it out if you wanted to. It's called just Talking Yanks or John Boy. It's a bunch of Yankee stuff. They only strictly do Yankees. It's not like my podcast where I do a bunch of sports. It's only Yankees for them. But yeah, they were talking about the Yankees and stuff, and they were talking about like cycles and stuff, where who would be the next player to hit the cycle. And there was an interesting stat that like they were talking about like who could hit a triple like easier, Gio Urshela or LeMahieu, because they've obviously both got the power to hit a triple, hit it off the wall, let it run a little bit, and then get a triple. But there was the number, and not saying that this stat isn't true, and I'm not saying that his speed might have declined, but you got to look at where you're getting the stat, because sometimes they read the stat then when they're running to first base, and a lot of times guys jog to first base, they don't usually sprint. So if this stat's them running to first base, usually, and you actually see this when they're young and they're really making their debut, they sprint. They're going to show a lot of effort. They're going to go down there, try to lay out a single. So in 2016 when he was first in the league, he might have sprinting quicker, be like, okay, I'm trying to make my spot on this roster. I got to show him everything I got. Now it might be I'm gonna not be lazy, but I'm not gonna risk an injury now. I'm not gonna go all out because I am on the roster now. But I don't know if that's from him doing his combine and stuff or his sprinting speed, or if that's him running to first base. Because if that's him running to first base, that stat really can't count. But you can look at it either way. One National League evaluator called it a huge concern. An American League scout added that his value takes a hit with me because I do not see him as a center fielder nor a particularly good left fielder. These are scouts and stuff. Everyone's saying their opinion. Like I said he's probably about average to slightly above average. I mean, for his age, he's probably a little bit above average. For out of the entire MLB, he's probably about average. But like I said, that's also because he's still growing, he's still learning. But now with the Royals, it's kind of more that thing, like, let me kind of turn into a little bit of that leadership role. Grant Bisbee of The Athletic noted that Benintendi has been chasing extra bulk for a couple years now, thinking what he needed to add more power, perhaps with a unintended consequence that it simply slowed him down. If that's true and his speed reduction isn't a physical red flag, it's possible Benintendi could return to the player he was earlier in his career. The Royals are making that bet. So that's what it is. But like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this deal works out. And it's going to really be interesting to see what the Red Sox do with those prospects, those players they get. Because, you could do so many things with prospects. You could trade them for picks. You could trade them for other prospects. You could trade them for a player. Sometimes what they always do is if you're going to go out and get a big-name player, you'll give them like 3-4 prospects and one of your main players on your roster or your 25-man roster, whatever the case may be. You could look at it either way. Benintendi traded from the Red Sox to the Kansas City Royals in an odd week before the season 3-team deal. Now, this is not, and I don't want to bring up basketball in this, but I'm just going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up anyway. Because I'm going to bring up basketball here. But this is not like a James Harden 3-team deal. That's going to happen 6 days before the MLB season starts, or MLB spring training, I should say, when pitchers and catchers report. But this is a smaller 3-team deal. Still, 3-team deals are odd to see. Because you got to realize, it's hard enough to come to an agreement with one team. It's even harder to come to an agreement with two teams. And I'm sure the Royals and the Red Sox started this, and either the Mets heard about it and jumped in, or either the Mets started whatever. It could have very well been the Mets that started the conversation here. Royals and Red Sox jumped in, and sure enough, it creates this. You'll never really know. It's crazy what could happen in a phone call between GM, or the Mets case, probably Steve Cohen and owner, or Sandy Alderson and other GMs and stuff. But it's really as crazy what could happen in a phone call with two front offices. It really is. But magic happens. That's what they always say. A lot of magic happens there. So this deal could have worked out as the Mets said, hey, I want this guy. I want this prospect. Either, it could be possibly, Chris Bryant's still out there. So it could be possibly, I want to trade for Chris Bryant. This guy, I think, is what the Cubs need. And they're, whatever. It could be a bunch of stuff. I'm just speculating. But the Mets did jump on this deal. Usually there's always a reason behind it. And one of the reasons could be they're looking to get a guy. And maybe that team wants him. Or maybe that team, he could add him to that farm system. Or maybe even they try to slip away with, a starting player on their roster. But obviously they weren't able to get him, right? Something like that. But a lot of times when they get these prospects, sometimes, not that the prospects aren't going to do well, but a lot of times these guys stay in the minors or they'll trade him somewhere else. It really is crazy. It really is, and I'll talk a bunch about minor league baseball, but it really is crazy how much action happens with prospects. I mean, there's a ton of times where there's just prospects exchanges all the time. I won't talk about it on the podcast just because it's not that big of news, but there's all the times where you'll give two prospects and some cash considerations to another team, and that team will give another, right? It's crazy. There's so many different moving parts with teams trying to build up their farm system, build up their roster, especially near playoff time, when they're calling up guys, and if let's say they like what they see from a team that's a non-contender, they'll go and say, hey, I want this guy on my 40-man roster for the postseason, whatever the case may be. But that's really where the Mets stand on this, and obviously the Royals are getting the bulk of the players, and they're getting the bigger name in this, and that is Andrew Benintendi, former Red Sox outfielder. So let's look at here. Let's look at some of his numbers. I know I read some of the numbers, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth with some of his other numbers and stuff like that. So let's get up to his stats here. And like I said, last season was a little tough because he only had 39 at bats. So, it was a little harder, given that he only had 39 at-bats. And obviously, 39 at-bats compared to a regular season where if you play 162 or something, you'll get about 579 at-bats. So, a little bit different, but still, he could have done better. I mean, he obviously had a down year, and I can't argue that, but he did have a down year. But yeah, these are his summary here. So, it's... In 2020 season stats, he had 39 at-bats, 103 batting average, no home runs, an RBI, stolen base, and an average of 4.42. I mean, an OPS of 4.42. His MLB career stats, he has 1,837 at bats, 273 batting average, 51 home runs, 260 RBIs, 53 stolen bases. So like I said, he's not a huge home run hitter, and an OPS of 789. Like I said, he's still pretty young. He made his debut in 2016, so he's still pretty young. But these are some of his stuff. Obviously, he spent his first 5 years of his career with Boston. Obviously, each of those years, except 2016, his first year and last season, he has had over 140 hits. 144, 168, 158. By far his best season was in 2019. He had a batting average of 290. He had 21 stolen bases. He kept the strikeouts down at only 106 strikeouts. He was able to really see the ball well. He had the most walks of his career. He had 87 RBIs, 16 home runs, 41 doubles, 6 triples. That 20, and that's where they really, really always talk about, and I've always said this on my podcast too, is sometimes players show flashes of greatness one season and then they just can't get back to that form. And you always wonder, if that player can just get back to being that for just a little bit, can we get him back? And I'll tell you what, if the Royals get Benintendi like that and they get him to where he's back to what he was doing in 2019 or close to what he was doing in 2018, and what he was doing in 2018, if you can get him and the Royals get this would be a huge move for the Royals. Last season, like I said, he didn't even record a triple. He didn't even record a home run. He only had 4 hits. I mean, it was a terrible year for him last season. 1 RBI, only 11 walks. He had a ton of strikeouts. He had 17 strikeouts, given he only had 30. Just think about that. 39 at-bats, he had 17 strikeouts. That's a lot, considering only... that means he almost struck out over half of his at-bats. But you look at the other seasons, 2018, 106 strikeouts, he did not strike out that much, considering. And like I said, you give this guy more games, he'll be better. But, we'll see how it goes. And like I said, the whole running, the speed thing, that's all debate. That's all stuff there. But this is where he's going, the Royals outfielders here. So let's just look at some of the Royals outfielders. I did not mean to do that. Okay. So some of the Royals outfielders, they have Edward Olivares, Michael Taylor, Franchi Cordero, who obviously got traded, Jorge Soler, who has had a very, 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 very good run with the Royals, and Andrew Benintendi, obviously now. Michael Taylor obviously came from the Nationals. I definitely think that's something going to help him out. But like I said, they definitely had a little bit of they definitely needed, some of the outfield stuff, and they fixed it. They got Michael Taylor, they got Benintendi, and they obviously Jorge Soler has been better. But Jorge Soler, he's one of the best power hitting guys in the league. I mean, he has been a really, really, really good player. In 2019, he led the AL in home runs. Last season, had another really good season. But if you look at their opening day roster, it might look like something like their lineup. It might look like something like Soler, Benintendi. If you had to ask me right now where I think Benintendi would hit, I think first of all, I think a little bit's going to have to do with how he does in spring training. I think he's going to make the opening day roster. I think it's just where he hits. I think is going to have to do some of it is how he does in spring training. If he does well spring training and shows up, does well, hits well, then he might be hitting in like a 5-6 hole. But if he struggles, he might be hitting in like a 7-8 hole. He might be hitting in 7-8 either way. He might be hitting 7-8 either way just because that's just how he is. He's one of those guys at the bottom of the lineup, going to set up the beginning of the lineup, get on base, walk, get a single, use his legs. That's sometimes key because when you get those hitters, in the 3-4 area, and you have a guy on the bases like that, they call it all the ducks on the pond. When you have a couple ducks on the pond and Benintendi's out there and he can use his legs, it could really be successful for offenses. Like I said, last season he struggled, but if he can stay healthy, if he can play better, this will be a good deal for the Royals. And, it's an odd time for the Red Sox to trade him. One, because it seems like he's, would have been a part of that rebuild. But also, number two is he didn't play great last season. And, sometimes when a guy has a real good year and you might think about trading him, that's the best time to trade him. As crazy as it may seem, when guys have good seasons, a lot of times that next year, that offseason is the best time to trade him because his value is going to go from here all the way up here. Benintendi's value was already about right here because he was young. It went all the way up here. Like, if you would have gave him up then, you would have got so much in return than just a couple guys. But like I said, if he can turn to 2018 form and get that speed back and get that hitting back and stuff like that, this would be a really this would really work out well for the Royals. But like I said, it's really, if you think about it, it's two rebuilding teams just trading young players. It's really what it is. Benintendi and prospects, it's really what it is. It's just two young teams trading young players. A lot of times you see that happen with many different leagues, many different teams. But yeah, so that's what I got for this whole for the Benintendi thing here. Coming up next, Russell Wilson rumors are starting to swirl, and I'm not saying I'm buying into them all a bit, but Russell Wilson rumors are starting to swirl, and they are starting to heat up a little bit. I'll tell you why this could be huge for Seattle, depending on what happens. Seattle is not answering the calls. They're not interested, but I'll tell you why a requested trade from Russell Wilson could be right around the corner. Coming up next. All right, so alrighty. So Russell Wilson rumors are starting to heat up a little bit, and like I said this yesterday. I say a lot of stuff that sometimes I don't remember because I do these podcasts Monday through Friday, but I definitely have said this. I think I said it yesterday too with the Jets. I've definitely said it so many times in the podcast. Rumors are rumors. Rumors are rumors, and when things happen, they happen. So, rumors are different than a deal. Rumors are a little bit different, but this isn't. I wouldn't so much say rumors. This is a fact. But the rumors are that, Wilson might want out, this and this, that, this and this and that, whatever the case may be. But what I will say is this is a fact. Seahawks not looking to move quarterback despite some teams' interest. So Russell Wilson trade rumors, Seahawks not looking to move quarterback despite the interest. So teams, multiple sources confirm, multiple sources say, teams have been calling, asking the Seattle Seahawks if Wilson's available. If he's not, can we possibly make him available by giving you this, and this, A, B, and C, give you this amount of draft picks, give you this player, give you this quarterback, whatever the case may be. Teams are calling, teams are asking, teams are wondering what his availability is, if they're willing to trade him, and if so, how much. Because I'll tell you what, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to get traded anytime soon. I think he's going to be there for a long time. But I'll tell you what, if it does happen to be a trade, it's going to be a ginormous trade. It's going to be probably like 3 first-round picks. It's going to need to be like 2 players, your quarterback, and it may be like a second round and maybe like a third-round pick. You're going to have to give up like 4 picks, probably like 2 really good, probably like 2 players, and it may be like definitely your quarterback. Like if the Jets have to, let's say the Jets trade for him, for example, I'll use a New York team. Let's say the Jets trade for him, example. You're gonna probably have to give up Darnold. You'll probably have to give up 2 other players, whether that's a receiver to build around Darnold, or whether that's a defensive player because the Seahawks defense has struggled, or whether that's even an offensive line because the Seahawks need that. And then probably the Jets 2 first-round picks, maybe 1 pick from next season in a first round, a second, and maybe a third. You would have to give up like 4 picks, 2 players, and a quarterback. Like, you're going to have to give up a lot. Now, if it turns into a Watson situation, you might see a little bit less because the quarterback wants out of there. But currently, Russell Wilson does not want out of Seattle. This is currently happening. Russell Wilson does not want out of Seattle. That's currently. things could definitely change. We saw it with Deshaun Watson. Watson seemed fine. Things were doing fine. Obviously he played well. They struggled this season, obviously, but it seemed like he was set on doing well. They fired the coach. They fired the GM. They hire a new GM. They don't have any communication with Watson. Watson, all of a sudden, the rumblings start rumbling, and he then requests a trade, and the Texans then now have him kind of locked up in a way. Like, they have him. Like, they have all the control over Watson. So, Watson, to be honest, it's kind of tough to be in Watson's situation because they have all the control over Watson, and Watson can't do anything about it. If he decides not, if they decide not to trade Watson and Watson doesn't want to play, he would sit out. But that's what I feel like this is. Not saying it's going to happen, but I feel like in a way, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. If Russell Wilson does come out and we're in the next couple weeks and we're in free agency and they're not making any moves and the draft and they're not making decisions and the numbers and the stuff looks like that Russell Wilson's going to be the most sacked quarterback again, I wouldn't be surprised if Russell Wilson requests a trade. Now, when he would request a trade, I would say if he's going to request a trade, it's going to be around the free agency period. If the Seahawks aren't doing anything and they're not making moves, and if they are, it's not to build the offense line. People, Russell Wilson last season in 17 games, including the playoff game against the Los Angeles Rams in the wild card round, he got sacked 51 times. That was the most among every quarterback in the NFL. Okay, Russell Wilson I'm talking about. This is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and will go down in Seahawks history as an all-time great. You have to protect him. You cannot possibly put no one on that offensive line. You have to protect him. So, Russell Wilson has came out and said he's expressed some frustration, and he said that he wants to have some more say in the offensive line decisions and some of the other decisions. And we've seen this with quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks that have made an impact on our team, like a Watson, in this case, Wilson. So, what's going to be interesting here is whether Wilson decides to trust the front office of the Seattle Seahawks and go ahead and say, you know what, I trust you guys, you better build around me. Or he could very well go to the Seahawks front office and say this, you either build around me and give me a good offense line, or I'm out of here. Forget about it. I'm done. See you, Seattle. I'm going to somewhere else. That would be an interesting situation. But teams are not the Seahawks are not interested in trading him. So, in a way, this might not be the best case for Russell Wilson to request a trade. And another thing, too, is they fired the offensive coordinator. And Wilson, you could tell he might not have been completely happy about that. So now to fire him, Wilson to be on his own boat now trying to getting a new offensive coordinator, not having much say in that, Wilson's got to go get a new offense. He might just want to start fresh somewhere else. So a lot of things could happen in this deal, but this is where it currently stands. Teams are interested, teams are calling, and the Seahawks aren't answering. I wouldn't be surprised if not answering doesn't mean, if a team's calling, they're just not going to answer. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even just a meeting or a call and they pick it up and they say, we're not interested in trading Wilson, whatever the case may be. We're not interested in trading him. And if a team offers them a deal, they might say, no, that deal doesn't work for us, or whatever the case may be. But obviously they're not interested in trading Russell Wilson. And I don't know what Russell Wilson is. I don't know what's going on with Russell Wilson. I don't know if he wants to stay in Seattle. I don't know if he wants to leave. I don't know if he wants to get a fresh start with a team that's building an offense line. But whatever. This is very odd. But as in Russell Wilson's long career with the team, this is the first kind of little bit of a bump in the road they've gotten. Some of the teams that might have called, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets called. Anytime you can get a star quarterback like Wilson, I wouldn't be surprised if they called. Dolphins, maybe, if it comes down to possibly getting Wilson. That's tough to say. Patriots, probably, I'm sure, have called. The Steelers, maybe. The Colts, probably, definitely. Raiders, maybe. Bears, probably, definitely. Panthers. The Steelers, maybe. Big Ben said he wants to be back, but I'll tell you what. If you told me I could get Wilson right now, But he's not, obviously they say he's not available. But that's another thing too. Is like if Wilson starts to become even more frustrated, then he might become more available. Because you don't want a guy like that in your locker room, maybe, right? We'll see what happens. But I mean, Wilson's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He really is. And this is a guy that didn't have the best year of his career this season. Obviously, he started off really well, but he didn't end that strong. But part of the reason is he got sacked the most in the NFL. And how would you feel if you were getting sacked every single play? I'm sure not pretty good. That's what Wilson's in. And I think Wilson, deep down inside, wants to stay with Seattle. But at the same time, you got to do sometimes what's best for him. And if he doesn't feel comfortable, if he doesn't feel protected, you got to realize, too, this is health-wise, too. If they don't block it, if they don't protect him up front, and he's getting sacked every play, your risk of injury getting sacked 51 times a game goes way up. So this is even just on a health side of things. This is even just skill or being on a team or going to a new team, getting a fresh start. This is yourself here. You're talking about injuries here. If you don't get a good offensive line, your injury chance goes way up. Right? So Wilson, that's another thing too. On a personal level, he might not feel comfortable. And confidence level too, if you're sitting at confidence level too, if every play you're getting under pressure, that might make him rush throws a little bit more. Because you just don't trust your offensive line. And that's when it gets really bad, is when you don't trust them. DK Metcalf, I understand, he's got a good connection with DK Metcalf, got a good connection with Tyler Lockett. I don't think he's going to request a trade. I don't think they're going to trade him, but just saying, it wouldn't surprise me. Let me give an article here. So, Russell Wilson trade rumor, Seahawks not looking to move quarterback despite interest. Though teams around the NFL continue to ask about Russell Wilson, the Seattle Seahawks are reportedly rebuffing any trade talks. Per Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. Those teams, from what they have picked up on so far, have gotten no indication that the Seahawks are in any way inclined to trading their star quarterback, Pelissero reports. Wilson earned his 7th Pro Bowl selection in 9 NFL seasons in 2020 and remains under contract for another 3 years. The 32-year-old continued to impress while setting a career high in 2020 with 40 passing touchdowns. He had 4,212 passing yards and 513 rushing yards while remaining one of the NFL's top dual threats. Considering the Seahawks went 12-4 last year and had high expectations for 2021, it would make little sense to trade the talented quarterback. A swap also wouldn't make much financial sense, as Seattle would incur $39 million in dead cap money if it dealt with Wilson before June 1st per spot track, a greater number than his $32 million cap hit. Despite these holdups, Wilson made headlines by saying he was upset with the lack of pass protection. I'm frustrated with getting hit too much, Wilson said Tuesday per Greg Bell of the News Tribune. Jason La Canfora of CBS Sports noted several teams have already shown interest in the quarterback, including the New Orleans Saints, Las Vegas Raiders, and the Miami Dolphins. It still doesn't appear Seattle is willing to budge on any deal. Like I said, I said the Dolphins would probably be in there. I said the Raiders would. Saints, kind of forgot about them. They said they're sticking with Winston, but I would take Wilson over Winston, obviously, with Drew Brees. 99% sure he will be retiring. He just hasn't announced it yet. With him more than likely retiring, they're going to need to find a new quarterback. I don't think Winston's the answer there. I did say the Raiders are an interesting situation because one day they said that they're going to willing to give up Carr. The next day they said they aren't. But now people are saying it might be a camp battle, a training camp battle between Carr and Mariota, and whoever does better is the starter. And you've got 2 decent quarterbacks. Derek Carr's decent, and Mariota has shown flashes. He just has been inconsistent of late. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Wilson. And like I said, when you get mad with the front office, and the front office really isn't listening to you, that's the part where it wouldn't surprise me if you request a trade. Now, it's very odd because he's been with the team that long. To then see him go somewhere else would be insanely odd. But we all said the same thing about Matthew Stafford. We all said the same thing about many of these quarterbacks. Phillip Rivers, he's going to be a Charger forever. Tom Brady, everyone said that he was going to be a Patriot forever. He's with the Buccaneers now. So, things could happen. NFL, anywhere in sports. Many things happen, and this could be one of them. This could be a situation where, disagreements, not happy with each other, boils down to parting ways. And that's a lot of times what happens. When they say both sides agree, it means that both sides were having a little bit of a chippy relationship and decided on, it would be best for both parties to move their separate ways. Seahawks go get a new quarterback and Russell Wilson start fresh somewhere else. I don't foresee that happening. And also, considering that he is 32 years old, getting a little bit up there in age, considering that he's 32 years old, why not finish out your next couple of years in Seattle? He's under a 3-year deal. It'd be interesting. Now, if his contract was up here and he was a free agent and these things were going on, I would put money that he does not return. But since he's under contract and since they would have to trade him, I do think he returns. But what I'm saying is I'm not surprised if he requests a trade. I would not be surprised if he does. And like I said, if he's going to request a trade, I think it would happen somewhere in free agency if the Seahawks aren't doing anything. If the Seahawks aren't making any decisions and they're not getting any offensive linemen and they don't do anything in the draft, that is where I think he would get really angry. Because then he would realize if this is the same offensive line that led to me getting sacked 51 times last season and they barely built around it. I mean, people got to realize, sometimes everyone always parts with the organization. I look at it both ways. I always look at it, either way. I sometimes go with, the organization, whether if a player, is requesting a trade and stuff. But I sometimes stand on the player's side here, and I'm actually a little bit on Wilson's side here if he does in fact request a trade. Because you got to realize, he got sacked 51 times, people. How would you feel to get sacked 51 times, right? Like, that's an insane amount to get sacked 51 times in a season and to be getting paid that much money and still to be playing that good. You give him a good offensive line, it would make a big difference. Injuries too. That could cause injuries. So even on a personal level, he just might not feel comfortable back there. I do think he stays in Seattle. But just saying, I would not be surprised if he requests a trade. That's all I'm saying there. So, we're going to keep up with these rumors. But, teams calling about Wilson, I mean, some possible options. Could be Derek Carr heading over there. Even Orlando Brown from the Ravens just requested a trade. I mean, he's one of the best offensive linemen in the league. If I was the Seahawks, I would jump on that right now. If I was the Seahawks. But I mean, this is too. I mean, this is your franchise quarterback. I mean, you would think they would get him protection. But obviously they haven't gotten protection yet. So we'll see how it goes. But it's gonna be really interesting to see how this unfolds. Like I said, I'm gonna say it again. I don't think he requests a trade. I think he does stay in Seattle. Just saying, it would not surprise me if he does. Now we move on to the college basketball and stuff like that. So for college basketball here, Minnesota, Purdue, or actually yesterday, Houston won, Virginia won, Iowa won, Tennessee won, Villanova won, Ole Miss won, Wisconsin won. And today we got Minnesota, Purdue. I give Minnesota the win, and USC, Washington. I give USC the win. So there's your top 25 games. As for the NBA, yesterday, the Raptors won, Mavericks won, Clippers won, Grizzlies won, Nuggets won, Bulls won, Suns won, and Thunder won. Bulls won, Suns won, and Lakers won. There it is. So the Nets also won yesterday, 104-94. We moved to 15-12 on the season. Really solid games for the Nets, not only offensively, but defensively. Played really good on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously 35 points from Irving, 19 from Harden, another double-double for Harden. Irving played really well. Harris had a good game. All around, really good performance. I think this was, like I said, one of our best put-together performances of the season. All-around performance of the season. Today, for the NBA, Heat, Rockets give Heat the win. Celtics, Raptors give Celtics the win. Pacers, Pistons give Pacers the win. 76ers, Trailblazers give 76ers the win. Warriors, Magic give Warriors the win. And as for the NHL here, yesterday the Maple Leafs won, and the Rangers also lost yesterday. Rangers lost 3-2. The Rangers lost yesterday 3-2. We moved to 4-5-3 on the season. We just gotta keep going. We gotta start learning how to hold on to leads. Today we got the Panthers, Lightning give Lightning the win. Penguins, Islanders give Penguins the win. Blue Jackets, Blackhawks give Blackhawks the win. Oilers, Canadiens, give Canadiens the win. Predators, Red Wings, give Predators the win. Jets, Senators, gives Jets the win. Stars, Hurricanes, give Hurricanes the win. Golden Knights, Ducks, give Golden Knights the win. Flames, Canucks, give Flames the win. Sharks, Canes, give Sharks the win. And that's that there. And now I move on to fantasy hockey here, or fantasy basketball and hockey here. But fantasy basketball here, I'm winning in fantasy basketball. 781 to 767. So going pretty good there. My lineup today, I got Kemba Walker, Victor Oladipo, Jimmy Butler, Jeremy Grant, Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and Miles Turner. So those are pretty good there. And then also here, the injury report here. Anthony Davis is day-to-day. Davis, Achilles, is unavailable Wednesday against the Thunder. Mike Trudell of the Lakers official site reports. That obviously was yesterday. And Bradley Beal is also... Beal rest has been ruled out for Friday's game against the Knicks, so he will be out there. And as for the hockey here, as for fantasy hockey here, I'm winning 61 to 51, so going pretty good there. And the players today, I got Steven Stamkos, Brandon Point, Ansez Kopitar, Jamie Benn, Johnny Gaudreau, Brock Beausier, Nick Ehlers, Joe Pavelski, Jeff Petrie, Ryan Ellis, Duncan Keith, Shea Weber, Adam Larson, and Shea Theodore, and obviously my bench is rest. So some stuff here, a lot of injury report here. So Shea Theodore is out. Theodore, undisclosed, will not be available for Thursday's contest against Anaheim. David Shion of the Las Vegas Review-Journal reports. Panarin's also day-to-day. Head coach David Quinn said that Panarin suffered a little bit of a lower body injury during Wednesday's loss to the Rangers. Vince Z. Mercongliano of USA Today reports. So I did see that. He was obviously on the sideline and stuff. So we'll see... We'll see how that goes there. And then John Gibson's also day-to-day. Gibson face won't suit up for Tuesday's game versus the Golden Knights. Elliot T. Ford of the Orange County Register reports. So that was obviously yesterday, but we'll see how that goes there. So, so that's what I got for the podcast there. Obviously, I'd much rather just my team to stay healthy and stuff, but that's sports. That's hockey, especially hockey. Hockey, a lot of stuff happened in hockey. So, but yeah, that's what I got for the podcast here today. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. It was another good podcast. A lot of sports, a lot of great sports. So it's good. But yeah, with all that being said, that will do it for the podcast here today. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.